right, guys, welcome back to another video. So this was a news article that a lot of people were talking about. I haven't read through it yet. I'm just going to read through it live on this video, and we'll see what Christopher Dring of GamesIndustry.biz has to say about the Activision Blizzard acquisition. This is his opinion piece, but I saw a lot of people talking about it on Twitter. But he's talking about Microsoft and if they did enough in Europe to get the Activision Blizzard deal to be passed by the EU. We know yesterday was a massive day with just tons of stuff that happened. Brad Smith came out, talked about how he had the contract for Sony and for PlayStation that was ready to be signed when they were ready. They made the deals with Nintendo and with Nvidia, and there was a lot of stuff that will play in effect when they make their decision as to whether they are going to pass this deal or not, or whatever decision they make, whether it's with remedies and stuff like that. So let's go through this article here. This is going to be a little bit different style of video. Like I said, I haven't read through it yet. I'm going to read through live and just give my opinions and commentate on it as we go through it. He starts here. During Microsoft's press briefing yesterday, the firm's Brad Smith pulled out an envelope with a contract in it. And there's a video of this going around, actually. Pretty interesting. Sounds pretty confident when he's talking about it, but he says, "I walk around with an envelope that contains the definitive agreement that we sent to Sony 2 days before Christmas. I am ready to sign it anytime." He says it was a theatrical flourish, which apparently he also did within the closed European Commission hearing earlier that day. There was something a tiny bit Trumpian and performative about the whole thing, and somewhat sums up the entire regulatory battle over whether this deal goes over the line. So he thinks this entire thing was an act. Now, the way Brad Smith presented himself, I wonder if I can pull it up here. We can watch the video. I may have it in my liked, and we'll just watch it because it's the best way to show it. He was just pretty much saying here that he's ready. He's ready to sign this thing, and it's Sony who isn't ready to sign this thing. And that at any point when they want to come to the table, they're going to come to the table. Okay, 1 second. I will find it and we'll cut back. All right, here it is, courtesy of my friend Crazy Louis Gaming. And this is the video of Brad Smith and what he is calling Trumpian and performative.
We haven't yet reached an agreement with Sony. I hope we will. I walk around with an envelope that contains the definitive agreement that we sent to Sony 2 days before Christmas. I'm ready to sign it at any time. And if Sony doesn't like the words, we're ready to sit down and pull out a pen or a version of Microsoft Word and its cut and paste features. We know that advances in everything in life require dialogue. We're committed to that. We're committed to that with the European Commission. We're committed to that with other regulators around the world. We're committed to that with other companies in our industry. We're committed to that with Sony itself. And I hope and believe that this is a day, like many other days that I've spent in Brussels, that will advance our industry and regulation in a responsible way.
So there you have it. That's the video that Christopher Drings is referring to here as being performative, being Trumpian, and that this entire thing is kind of, it's theater is what is going on here. Now, I'll be honest. This video, you watch it, it's pretty powerful. He does a really good job at explaining what is happening here, that they're ready, and that obviously the contract that they have drawn up has been accepted by other major companies within the industry, Nintendo and Nvidia, and Steam assumingly is going to be on board with this. I mean, they've already said they are on board. They don't even need a contract for it. And his whole point here is that Microsoft and Xbox are not being the unreasonable ones in this situation. It is Sony right now being the unreasonable party, and they are willing to sit down and even make changes to this contract to come to an agreement that will be better for everybody. That was his entire point, and he presented it in a very strong way. You would look at that and probably have some sort of emotional conviction from it, emotional reaction from it. And you kind of have to do that. That's what politics is at the end of the day. You are dealing with government regulators who are, you can tell already, they aren't basing all of their reasonings and their decisions solely off of pure factual information. I think a lot of these people are also using their emotions in trying to make their decisions for this deal. I think that's just human nature, which is why he's probably trying to appeal to people's emotions. So I didn't really think there was anything wrong with that video, but I can kind of see where he's saying it is somewhat performative. but he's just, again, telling that he has the deal and they're ready to sit down and make the deal. Continues on here and says, earlier in the day, the U.S. Union Communication Workers of America issued a statement about why the deal would be a good thing, a group that has absolutely no bearing on the regulator's decision over whether the acquisition goes ahead. During the press briefing, Smith referred to the union statement, which suggests that the whole thing was part of a coordinated PR move. Well, I mean, for say what you want on that one, the end of the day, the workers will be in a better position working at Microsoft than they will be working at Activision. And these journalistic companies, and I'm sure GamesIndustry.biz have made articles on it. I don't have it up in front of me, but big media across gaming industry all the time are writing about crunch, or writing about the bad workplace environments in the video game industry. But now all of a sudden with this deal, it's something that it doesn't even matter, just a coordinated PR move, and it's going to have no bearing on this decision. I understand this is an opinion piece, but wouldn't you want this to have a bearing on the decision of this deal going through? Wouldn't that be a big part for a lot of these people working at these big game media websites, that the employees, that they continuously write articles to try to defend and say that they are in terrible working conditions, have a better working condition in the future? I think that would be a massive thing, and I think that should be celebrated. And a win if this deal goes through is that the workers will have a better place to work other than Activision Blizzard. Continues here saying, Valve and Nintendo, two companies who have been dragged into the conversation, have been promised Call of Duty for 10 years. Nintendo signed a contract over the proposed deal, which again, that was a huge thing. Microsoft announced that in a release ahead of the hearing, the suggestion is that Nintendo supports the deal, but really it just supports getting a game on its console. Valve doesn't oppose the deal, but Gabe Newell dismissed the 10-year contract as necessary. I mean, they offered them a deal, they signed the deal. Call of Duty coming to Nintendo, I think, is better for gaming in general. More people who have access to video games is a good thing. So maybe they didn't need to actually sign something on paper. Microsoft, or Activision for that matter, could develop a game for the Nintendo Switch, but now this is putting it on written contract that can't be swayed away from without penalties, I would assume, if this deal does go through. Activision hasn't put Call of Duty on Nintendo since Call of Duty Ghosts on the Wii U. If this deal gets blocked, they will still have no incentive to put the game onto the Nintendo Switch. They still are the highest selling game every year. Why would they go out of their way to do something? At least now, for gamers of Nintendo, they know this deal goes through, we're going to get a chance of playing Call of Duty again on the Nintendo platform, which I don't see how that in any way is a bad thing. People are arguing that it may degrade the game because it's going to be on the Nintendo Switch hardware. I don't think it will. I think they're going to come up with a way to make sure that the game has content parity, has feature parity, and potentially it's just going to have worse graphics at the end of the day. But that's something that you have right now across all of the gaming consoles. They're different in the way that they run on the PlayStation 5, on the Xbox, like slightly different, but they are different. And then PC, you can get an even higher graphics fidelity if you have like a 4090 and stuff like that. So it'll just be that. And I think that's a good thing, getting more people into Call of Duty. And who knows what's going to happen between now and the time this deal goes through, or by the time the next Call of Duty comes out. The Nintendo Switch 2 could come out, which could be running games at the current specs that are being ran on the Xbox and the PlayStation. Next paragraph. This whole thing is a little bit of a performance. These are moves designed to prove Microsoft's good intentions. Call of Duty is already on Steam. There's already nothing to stop Activision Blizzard from putting Call of Duty on the Switch. Well, no, there's nothing to stop Activision Blizzard from putting Call of Duty on the Switch, but like I just said, they haven't been. So why would they do this going forward? Just for what reason do they have going forward? Again, this isn't just performative because it is guaranteeing that they are going to be putting the game on the Switch. So I don't know where that logic comes in, where this is just some sort of performance for the Switch when Activision, again, hasn't put it on since the Call of Duty Ghosts on the Wii U. In fact, the company is one of the very best at making games on the Switch. See Tony Hawk's Crash Bandicoot, Spyro, Diablo, and so on. Again, they haven't put Call of Duty on the Switch since the Wii U. The publisher clearly doesn't feel it's worth it, but regardless it's effective, it counters the argument well. The big repeated statement from Smith was this gives 150 million more people or devices the chance to play Call of Duty should the deal go through. It's proof that the acquisition is good for players. The 150 million number is overstated, of course. I mean, you know what? I'm going to continue reading on this, but I'm sure that they do make these things sound slightly better than what they will actually be in reality. I mean, that happens all the time. Companies are hyperbolic, even when they're marketing games, marketing console, all that type of stuff. After all, many of those 150 million players either already have the ability to play the game or simply don't want to. But the sentiment behind the number is true. If this deal goes through, Call of Duty will be available in more places to more people. And I think at the end of the day, that's the bottom line. It's the access. It isn't trying to force people to be going out and play Call of Duty if they don't want to. But now they have that access that they didn't previously have, which I don't know how this can be turned into something that is a bad thing. The NVIDIA GeForce Now announcement was more significant in my eyes. The regulators have two issues. The first is around the console market, and the other is around where the games industry is heading with subscription and streaming. And subscription and streaming is the future. Xbox is in the lead and will continue to be in the lead. And if this deal goes through, it will be miles ahead, I think, of any other subscription and streaming platform out there. And that's why Sony is scared. This is my theory on this, is that Sony definitely can compete with subscription and services. They have the assets. They have the know-how, they have all of that stuff, but they do understand that they have been behind the ball when it comes to it because of Xbox Game Pass, and they've adjusted a little bit too late right now. That's going to take a catching up, and this deal is going to make that catching up even worse. Like, they're going to have to work even double hard and probably start transitioning to their new strategy, moving away from console exclusivity as much sooner than they would have liked to. And that's why they're really against this deal. Microsoft has made a behavioral concession around Call of Duty on console, but hasn't offered anything to placate concerns that it will become dominant in this possible future where all games are streamed and paid for via subscription. The GeForce Now deal is that concession. Not only is Microsoft offering to put Call of Duty on the game streaming service, but all Xbox games that are currently on PC too. It's a big win for Nvidia and gives rival streaming services a chance to flourish. It is definitely a big win for Nvidia, getting all of those games that you could just keep playing on Steam and then use Nvidia GeForce Now and use it to stream your Xbox first-party games. Continues here and says, maybe I'm too cynical, but the 10-year time span on the Nvidia deal doesn't feel significant enough. Streaming is a nascent distribution model for video games. It actually makes sense for Microsoft to support its competitors in an effort to drive users to this space. How long will it take before streaming becomes significant? 5 years, 10 years, and will Microsoft renew the deal then? And I think that is the big question. It's a good question to ask. I agree with this. Will they renew the deal in 10 years? And it's all going to come down to the money. At the end of the day, this is business, right? It's all going to come down to a look at the amount of people playing their games via NVIDIA GeForce Now. And if it's big enough, which I feel like it'll be a relatively big portion if NVIDIA GeForce Now continues to grow, they have a decent subscriber base. Why would they take these games off of that service and just push those gamers away and then try to get them into Game Pass when they can continue to license those games out, continue to make the money off of Nvidia, continue to make the money off of people purchasing these games and using it through the streaming service? It's kind of similar to like what they've done, what they're doing with Call of Duty, and kind of similar, I think, what they're going to be doing or what they've done with Minecraft and the legacy games from Bethesda like ESO. You're not going to want to alienate a ton of people playing your product when they're already playing it on the other platform. You're just going to continue to keep it there because you can continue to make money off of it. So I don't think that 10 years from now, Microsoft is just going to take these games off of these services unless it's just not worth keeping up and there's not enough players. It's costing too much to uphold. It's costing too much infrastructure, all that type of stuff where the ROI isn't there. But I feel like this is going to be a big win for gamers, a big win for Nvidia, that there will be tons of people playing these games, that the ROI will make complete sense for Microsoft to keep these games on Nvidia GeForce Now, on Nintendo past the 10-year deal. But that's all speculation. We have no idea. We're not going to know about this for 10 years. Even so, it is a counter to the one part of regulators' concerns that Microsoft had up until now not had an answer to. So there is an improved argument for Microsoft in Brussels, even beneath the spin, although I've not even mentioned one of the arguments, which is the 80-20 pie chart that Xbox used to show how dominant PlayStation is in Europe. There's a lot of talk about that on social media. It's actually not wrong. It just leaves out every other platform, including Nintendo. And he's right on that. It was definitely, when I saw that, I'm like, okay, so they're only using PlayStation and Xbox, but PlayStation is the main competitor for this deal. They're the main opponent of it. And if you remember some of those documents that came out from, I forget which regulatory body, it was either the CMA or the EU or even the FCC, they said stuff about how Nintendo wasn't even considered as a competitor because they are just in a different realm when it comes to their strategy and stuff like that. So Microsoft didn't set this up as just wanting to focus on PlayStation. It was the main thing that these regulators had focused on and pretty much had just ignored Nintendo when presenting your case. So I'm assuming that's why they focused on only PlayStation on that pie chart. It's hardly in keeping with the company's previous insistence that there are more games platforms out there than just Xbox and PlayStation, but the point was to show that in Europe, the one company objecting to the deal already has a commanding lead. Microsoft wants the regulators to see PlayStation as the big business, and Google and Apple. Oh, and Activision Blizzard is worried about Tencent. It's always good to have a Chinese opponent in these conversations, I'm sure. There is truth to Microsoft's view on some areas of the games market and the dominance of certain players, but I cannot see them successfully painting themselves as the underdog. And when it comes to Activision Blizzard being worried about Tencent, there was a report that came out, I believe it was a couple of days ago, where the Tencent seemingly is in support of this deal now, and there was one other unnamed Chinese big gaming company that was in support as well, and there was one that was against it. So Tencent, assumingly, if those reports are true, are in favor of this deal as of right now, but that hasn't been ruled on in China yet. The whole thing has become seemingly endless circus of hyperbole, yet I suspect to political journalists, this is all quite normal. This is part of the game. If Microsoft is playing politics when it comes to Sony and regulators, Activision Blizzard isn't. Its statement against PlayStation and the European Commission yesterday was far less even-handed. Fresh from obliterating its relationship with NetEase, you have to wonder how Activision and PlayStation will be able to renew their relationship should this deal not go ahead. And that is a big thing. What is going to happen if this deal doesn't pass? PlayStation is kind of shooting themselves in the foot. I don't foresee Activision working nicely with them, especially with the marketing deal. When that thing's over, the chances of PlayStation is getting that again, I think, are pretty low. And that's going to hurt PlayStation's business, because one of the main things that makes Call of Duty so big on PlayStation is the marketing. Like, you see a commercial, you see the next Call of Duty come out, and it's branded with PlayStation. The first thing you're going to think of when you want to play that game, if you're somebody who only wants to play Call of Duty, is getting it on PlayStation. And I'm sure that's paid dividends for PlayStation and people coming into their ecosystem and onto their platform to play it. Continues here saying, Bobby Kotick issued a stinging attack on the UK sector, warning that it will become Death Valley in terms of big tech if the regulator blocks this deal. I believe he said that on a business show. It was MSNBC or something. I remember seeing that video. Kotick's experience in the UK comes largely from buying studios, failing to make them work, and closing them again. So he calling out Bobby here in terms of his success in running video game studios, in the video game industry within the UK. And if he thinks that a statement like that is going to in any way convince the UK regulator to approve the deal, then he clearly has no notion of UK culture and its political leaders. Now, this is interesting because him saying that, if you don't believe it has any effect on this deal, then all of the theatrics and everything that is going on as well should have no effect or matter at all within the CMA, within the UK, within any regulatory bodies with this deal. You're saying that they are only going to be looking at the facts to pass the deal. And even if Bobby Kotick is saying something that is against these regulatory bodies, they're just going to ignore it and base their opinions and their decision off of the facts that are present and available to them. And from what we've seen so far is that, I mean, from our perspective in the public on the outside looking at this, is that Sony has a very weak arguments right now as to why this deal should be blocked. I mean, that is the main thing here. We actually have a tweet. I'm going to pull it up here because it's a really good point. It's from Foss Patents, and it's replying to this article saying, the absurdity here is not that Microsoft and Activision Blizzard defend the deal, or that the pie chart is simply based on the two-horse race market definition proposed by Sony. I mean, again, that's the thing. The market race was proposed by Sony. The absurdity is that there's no credible theory of harm, but the deal hasn't been closed yet. And I think that's what everybody on the outside is seeing. Yet in this article, it sounds like from this paragraph, I guess Christopher Drings is upset that Bobby Kotick called out the UK. But people hate Bobby Kotick. He doesn't deserve to be praised because of all the stuff. Obviously, what happened in Activision. He doesn't seem like a very good CEO, but he called out the UK, and this just seems like you're hurt by the fact that he called out the UK, and that isn't going to make any difference in the regulatory bodies at the CMA, which I hope it doesn't. I hope there are no statements like this for or against this deal that affect whether this deal goes through or not. I hope the only way that this deal goes through is by the CMA and these other regulatory bodies looking at the facts of the matter. And as of right now, from everything we can see, the facts of the matter are there's no reason to block this deal. It is all just Sony coming up with these arguments that are seemingly are being shut down and destroyed by Microsoft by them going out and licensing out Call of Duty for 10 years and putting their games on the games that they would be getting onto multiple different platforms. Meanwhile, the company's EVP Corporate Affairs and CCO Lulu Chang-Meservey, fresh from her interview with Axios, tweeted this meme out during yesterday's hearing. Just to stress, this is an executive vice president of one of the biggest and most powerful entertainment companies on the planet. The meme was hilarious. I don't care what anyone says. This was hilarious. It was Sony riding a bike, putting a stick within their own spokes, refusing to accept guaranteed long-term access of Call of Duty, and then playing the victim, pretending like, oh no, what if we actually lose Call of Duty? What if we lose access to it, even though they've been offered a 10-year deal, and that this deal, Microsoft has said that they're willing to work on it. Basically, I guess he is calling that childish. I mean, you can call that childish. That's an opinion. You can say you don't expect these big COOs to be putting out stuff like this on social media and taking part in, I guess you would say, the console wars, but they are, because Sony initiated the console wars so far with this deal going on. They are kind of just responding to it, especially because from the perspective of most people right now who are looking at this deal, take platform preference away, I think the objective person looks at this and says that Xbox and Microsoft are being very reasonable and Sony isn't. And that's what I guess she is trying to get at here. All right, so I'm going to add this in as an aside to this section of the video because this happened after the fact that I recorded and edited, but I have to talk about it because it's pretty awesome. And it is Lulu Chang-Meservey going back at Chris String for his factually incorrect report about the meme that she tweeted out. So if you remember, he says, meanwhile, the company's EVP Corporate Affairs and CCO Lulu Chang-Meservey, fresh from her interview with Axios, tweeted this meme out during yesterday's hearing. Just to stress, this is an executive vice president at one of the biggest and most powerful entertainment companies on the planet. He's talking about that Sony meme with the bike and making it look like Sony thinks that they are the victim when they, obviously, from everything that we are hearing with the deals that they were given to Nintendo and Nvidia, have more than enough opportunity to get Call of Duty on to the PlayStation platform, at least for the next 10 years. And she responds to Chris String and says, "Hi Chris String, your DMs aren't open, but would you mind please correcting this? I appreciate how important you make me sound, and you have a right to your opinions. Dunks are fair game in my rule." It's awesome to see, so we'll see more dunks from Lulu. But I definitely did not tweet during the hearing, perhaps confusion due to time zones. He responds and said, I've changed that. She says, thank you. And he says, sorry about that. I clearly can't count backwards. So backpedaling as fast as he can right there, even replying again to her saying thank you. But this is great. This is great that she calls this out, even though it may, for some people, sound like it's just a really small thing. For a lot of people, it's a big thing for these big gaming journalistic websites to be posting stuff that isn't 100% factual. And that is the issue here that has been created with a lot of these gaming websites that people are continuously calling out. People are continuously losing their trust in them. They think there is this massive media bias against Xbox, and it's because of stuff like this that's happening. So it's great to see Lulu Chang-Meservey call it out. Now, for me personally, do I think there is a massive media bias against Xbox? I don't know. I don't have the statistics. I don't have evidence in front of me looking at all of the articles that people have posted that have been biased against Xbox, where they are lying and they're reporting just factually incorrect stuff to make that claim. And do I think Chris String did this on purpose? I can't really make that call either. I know I'm sitting on the fence here, but he may have just literally made the mistake of not counting backwards properly with the time zone. But the issue is the fact that he hit publish without double checking all of this stuff. If you're a journalist on one of these big websites, that's a part of the job, right? That's what you need to do before hitting publish, where millions of people or thousands of people, how many people look at these articles, are going to talk about it, share it, and read it, and take your word as something that is 100% fact. And that's where the issue arises. So it's great that Lulu Chang Mesrve calls it out, and she's doing a really great job at what she does in her role. If you look at her profile here, she also commented on just everything about the way she speaks, because people are obviously looking at her now. The spotlight's on her, especially after an article like this. And she says, why doesn't she talk the way I think a corporate executive is supposed to talk? She says, I talk like a person. Don't mind if that's unusual. If you're looking for the formal pronouncements on synergy and human-centric solutions powering the future or whatever, then I'm sorry, I can't do that. And that's also honestly great to hear. I think people just relate way more to the stuff that she has been doing, which is why people like her. She's definitely an executive of the people and not politically correct, not all that type of stuff that no one actually cares about. No one wants to see that stuff. No one cares about the cookie cutter responses that these big companies always give out. So it's awesome to see what she is doing. And again, this brings us back to the whole media bias thing and everything that's happened, at least in the last week or so. You remember this is VGC. They still have the headline up. And I tweeted something out the other day, which I still think is true. If people haven't retracted, especially these websites haven't retracted their initial reports for Redfall about not having a disc in the physical edition, which created a ton of chatter, ton of outrage, it got picked up everywhere, then those people really can't be trusted. Because look, this headline still up. It looks like Redfall's physical version includes a download code instead of a disc. Yeah, they have the update. Of course, they have the update in there, but the damage is done. This article was posted. People are still probably reading this headline, not reading past this headline, and still thinking there is no disc within Redfall. And it was clearly just a mistake, unclearly written within the FAQs, because it got updated and fixed very fast. This wasn't like a day later, a week later. Bethesda came out right away when they saw this, said, no, that was just unclear the way that we wrote it. There is a disc within the physical version of the game. And VGC still hasn't changed their headline, probably because they don't want to get out of the algorithm. It's been picked up by Google, all that type of stuff, and change the headline may affect it. I'm assuming that's one of the reasons why they keep these headlines, or maybe they just can't change it. I don't know. But one thing to take note of is that both VGC and GamesIndustry.biz are a part of ReadPop. And it's been a week here where they are reporting things that just aren't true. So take that for what you will. Could have both been just genuine mistakes. But at the end of the day, this is why people believe that there is a major media bias against Xbox. All right, so while we're here talking about the media bias stuff, I might as well add this part into it. This is gonna be a really long video, but I will have a timestamp for this section. So this is, again, it's getting worse. The snowball is rolling, it's getting bigger. Journalists are definitely coming out of the woodwork. They're definitely showing their bias. There's a lot of people here who don't want this deal to go through, or maybe they just don't actually like Xbox. And you can't fault Xbox fans from questioning game journalism and if there is a bias when they continuously are putting stuff out like this. So this is Clobro, and he tweets out, Jordan Midler, professional reporter at VGC News, calls Xbox fans the most embarrassing fan base on the entire planet. Now the tweet is deleted. He did write something else after saying he shouldn't have put out that aggro tweet or whatever, but it's too late. It's too late. You've shown your cards when it comes to the fan base that you dislike, the console or the brand you dislike because of their fan base. He tweets out, Jordan Midler, the most embarrassing fan base on the entire planet. BTS and Undertale fans look normal compared to this behavior. And he's quoting Patrick Klepek, who is another journalist, and he's making fun of the people saying that they love Lulu Chang Mesrve's tweet here. And you know what? I don't care. This is an awesome tweet, no matter how you look at it. This meme is great. And it really does show kind of what a lot of people think is going on right now with the Xbox Activision Blizzard deal. But anyways, he tweets that extremely normal behavior by everyone involved, and it's kind of just making fun of people. So there's some more media stuff. And then he also tweets this in reply to Colin Moriarty, saying, there's a reason to let my kids use Xbox One controller as a pacifier. Today, I haven't turned it on in months. And these are reporters. These are journalists that you are expecting to be non-biased in their reporting when they're talking about video games. And then they're probably get confused and upset when people are calling them biased and going on Twitter and calling out their articles and all that type of stuff. They do it to themselves. People are losing trust in these big game media websites if they haven't already. And again, it's just getting worse, and the snowball is continuing to roll. I wonder if we'll see more stuff like this as the week goes on, especially after everything that's been talked about and been happening with this entire acquisition. It continues here and says, Activision is turning this circus into one that's run by a bunch of 6-year-olds high on sugar. This sort of rhetoric might have won Donald Trump a huge audience, but this isn't the US, and it isn't the court of public opinion. You have to wonder how Microsoft feels about their approach to this situation. So another moment in the very long and very public acquisition saga has been and gone. It's not over yet, not even nearly. There are more claims, counterclaims, hyperbole, spun numbers, and redeployed arguments to come. Will the deal go through? Microsoft may have won over the European Commission. The regulators in Brussels are perhaps more willing to accept Xbox's proposed remedies. It will require policing, of course, but Brad Smith and his Microsoft team have been working the halls of the European Commission for years and have made previous arrangements like this work. Where the true challenge lies, however, remains the UK and the CMA. The CMA requests that Microsoft make structural remedies, selling off parts of the business such as Call of Duty to satisfy their concerns. Microsoft has rejected that option this week. Now they have just 2 weeks to convince the UK, or Death Valley if you prefer, that there is another way forward. The CMA was always viewed as the biggest obstacle in the path of this deal getting completed. And that remains the situation today. So that's the article. It's just his opinion, and his claims basically is that it's theatrics right now, that it was what is going on, comparing it to Donald Trump, comparing it to Trumpism as a way to try to push this deal through, believing that the way that Activision is acting is inappropriate, especially with the CMA, and that this isn't going to help the deal whatsoever. But overall, the points here is very cynical as to what happened yesterday at the EU. And I think honestly what happened yesterday was Microsoft coming out and saying, listen, you guys want us to make concessions. These are huge concessions we are making by offering Call of Duty for 10 years on these competing platforms. PlayStation already is so dominant within this market. Trying to protect PlayStation just doesn't make any sense. And I think by the concessions that Microsoft and Xbox are doing, it makes it even make less sense. And if the CMA doesn't see that, it'll be very interesting to see what their final reasonings are for blocking the deal, especially in a market where we see the competition between Xbox and PlayStation. It is closer, and this deal may make Xbox and Microsoft higher than PlayStation in terms of market share at some point. It would almost seem like they're really trying to protect that PlayStation market share, but we don't know. We'll see what their final decisions are. The CMA is going to be a huge one, and it'll be the one that really determines whether this deal goes through. But I'm gonna leave it there, guys. Let me know what you think about this. Let me know what you think about Christopher Dring's opinion in this article. Did you read it? And what do you think the chances are the CMA are going to look at the concessions that Microsoft made to the EU and go ahead and approve this deal? If you enjoyed this video, hit that thumbs up button. If you're new, or hit that subscribe button. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.
Bye.